And you've got two of the finest client journalists in the business here. Phil, who's obviously paid off by Gary Hetherington. We know that. I wish I knew who was paying me off for my opinions, but I don't know. I've got a Swinton shirt in the background. That's new.
For Mr. Kelner.
Yeah. It's all exciting, Phil, because we're recording this on Tuesday. We don't know yet what's going to happen with Luke Gale. He is the most evil person in rugby league or a victim of a massive conspiracy, depending on who you believe. And the truth as ever with these things is probably somewhere in the middle, because he's not evil. I don't believe he went with his studs up to try and take out Johnny Lomax's knee. I don't know what he was doing. I mean, I've been watching rugby league for 30 years. You've probably watched a few more games than I have. Have you ever seen anyone lead with the foot to try and charge down a kick?
Never. I mean, I've seen them lead with their bodies, their bums, their arms, their heads in some occasions, but I have never seen anybody absolutely stick their foot up to charge a kick down. I guess that it wasn't a malicious attempt in itself to injure another player, but the consequence of that action was that another player was injured. So how that is graded is deemed with the severity of that incident. The other part of it, which I think has caused consternation in certain quarters, for want of a better word, is that should he have got additional charges levied at him for trying to pick up someone who was injured because he felt that they were perhaps making more of the incident than perhaps they should do. And again, I find that the indefensible bit, that we've been through this before. We saw it with Michael McAlorum, I think, a couple of years ago. You cannot go and pick up a player who is injured until the severity of that injury is all that is important at the time. And the medical staff need to come on and assess it, obviously decide if it's worthy of the player concerned being taken off or needing extra treatment, reports back into the referee as to how that works. It's not up to the opposing player to make that decision as to how severe the incident may have been and to pick the player up. For all Luke Gale know, by accident, he had dislocated Johnny Lomax's knee, a player who has had a number of issues throughout his career with knee injuries. And you know, to be cited for that and have to explain your side of the story, and that to be taken into account perhaps in mitigation, I don't see an issue with that. I don't know why we're even questioning it, to be honest.
Someone did ask me on social media on Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember when it was, had I ever played the game, which I didn't reply to. I could have said, yeah, it's cool. What's that? What's it matter? I just called it stupid because it was a stupid decision to lead with your foot into the challenge. I don't understand where any of the controversies come from. It's an obvious red card. You can't pick people up because you don't know how injured someone is, as we've seen with more consequences than, you know, the regular tackle. Players can get injured from the most innocuous things.
And that's the issue with Danny Levy as well, who, again, the clip was shown that he barely touched the collar of an opponent who could have been suffering from a head injury. It's quite clear at the moment that, you cannot do that. So, you know, you have to accept the consequences of those actions. And what I don't understand is, clearly we've had a good start to the competition. We've had 2 decent rounds, one of which was in terrible weather, credit to everybody. We've had decent crowds. We've had really good viewing figures across a range of platforms. We've now started to turn on ourselves, saying that, it's all, you know, these decisions are not clear and the disciplinary is not in line with the decisions that are made. I just think we need to step back from all this at the moment. We're on a bit of a positive wave. Let's ride it, see how long it lasts. I genuinely do not understand why people are writing that they reckon they know of people who are no longer going to watch the game because it's gone soft. The game has always evolved. It's always changed. It has to move with the current litigation times. We also have to look at the welfare of players. We banged on about this for as long as I can remember. We talked about, fixture lists, and we talked about overload, and we talked about, again, standing people down for longer who've suffered concussion, which is happening this year. We've highlighted the cases of people like Stevie Ward, and not only the effects that having head injuries have had on him, but the work that he's tried to do to bring that to the attention of others. And whilst all that is going on, and exactly what we should be doing, and responding in the right way to the fact that more players of a whole range of ages are suffering from perhaps having played this game, and until that link is finally found, we need to preserve those who do. And at the same time, we're saying, apparently, although I've yet to find anybody, I'm not going anymore because the game has gone soft.
When Tony Smith comes out and says we're probably doing things for the right reason, to completely paraphrase what he said, then we're probably doing things right, because he seems to, have his head screwed on properly. What concerns me is one thing happens, so it means that something else can't happen. So the Connor Wynne sin binning, which in real time the referee has to make a decision, but Hull fans have decided now that, and the comments from the match review panel suggest that the player involved in the tackle may have unaided himself in terms of the position he found himself in. From, if we talk about the game's going soft, the game's had a problem with players trying to get around rules since probably they were invented. You can think of the famous example in the Challenge Cup final where players were a Hall of Famer used the rules to his advantage. So as well as everyone, it's all Chris Kendall's fault, or Luke Moore, Liam Moore, whoever we're blaming this week, Rob Hicks. The players who try to influence referees from their actions, why are we not calling them out more? I'm not saying, I've only seen the incident once. I'm not saying anything about Jack Wellesby, but an interesting decision to make him man of the match when he dropped the ball at least twice from a kickoff, or from kicks rather. But as much as this is a pro referee program, the players don't help themselves by trying to con the referees. And it happens in all sports. I'm not saying this is a rugby league thing. And we've got something else to talk about that is not just a rugby league thing as well. But they don't help the referees themselves. So how can they expect the referees to be on their side? I don't know.
We've always had gamesmanship. And you talk to coaches about their raison d'etre. They need to manipulate the rules to the best advantage for their team. That's always been the way with coaches, and that's exactly what they should be doing. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply the rules. I think the other thing that we do know is at the start of every season, there is always a purge, and there are always 3 or 4 weeks where players get caught up in the purge, and they need to learn what the tolerances are when new interpretations are brought in. And it's quite clear that for this year, it's not putting your foot on the ball at the play of the ball or whatever it might be, feeding the scrum in the middle. It's actually no contact with the head. And I don't know anybody that would say that isn't absolutely 100% responsible. It's what we should be doing as a sport. It's the modern way of playing the game. It's such that in terms of the collisions, hitting the head now is probably more significant than it has been, because yes, we don't have the biff anymore, and we've clearly talked about the fact that we're not advocates for ever bringing it back again. I'm glad that the shoulder charge is now outlawed. Whatever some may say about it, it's changed the nature of the game. Having 13 players when we used to have 15 changed the nature of the game. The game will always change. But I think the fact now that because the teams are kept so far apart, and because there's this constant interchange of forwards off the bench, whereby momentum tends to not be lessened, or intensity more than momentum, then when there are collisions that involve hitting the head, they have far more impact than perhaps even having a fight used to have in the old days, when in some respects that was part and parcel of a pack getting on top of the other. You look at people like Tom Johnson, David Fusitua, the fact that, they can't come straight back in after they have head injuries. That's telling you that the wingers are now being told to take the ball up in the first or second tackle often in a drive, and they are being hit by the big forwards. And it takes a huge toll if somebody gets their timing slightly wrong. And all this, we don't want the best players to be sat on the sidelines because we haven't exercised our due diligence in the sentencing. I don't want the best players on the sideline because they've got concussion for 3 weeks, or they're in danger of having their careers ended prematurely. I mean, I don't think we need to highlight anyone who said anything in the media space, perhaps defending players who've been offered particular sentences, or referees who maybe have been seen to perform in a certain way. I just think we need to jump off this before it becomes a bandwagon that takes over the sport. There is so much to talk about that is good. Just accept this for what it is. It's the next phase of development of rugby league. And I don't think there are a whole number of people who are not renewing season tickets, or not going to games, or not watching on television because they think the game isn't what they think it should be. That's always been the case. It always will be. And at the moment, if anything, attendances and viewing figures actually look more promising than they have than the last couple of years.
Those are they're the rugby league equivalent of the Leeds United fans who wouldn't go when whoever they didn't like as owner was in charge, including Mr. Bates. But as soon as they win, they'll be straight down Ellen Road, and straight down Headingley, the MKM Stadium, whatever Wakefield's called these days, the Jungle, etc., the AJ Bell. I still can't believe that people do not see one of the early retirement of one of their peers in Stevie Ward and not think on. It just doesn't compute that you can't add 2 and 2 together and get 4, which on this occasion you actually can. But there you go.
I haven't looked into it, but I think both of the issues that the head knocks that Stevie suffered weren't particularly deemed at the time as foul play. They were part and parcel of the game. I think there's something to do about the length of time of recovery from a concussion. There's also something to do with, I don't think I can't remember I don't think either were sin binning offences at the time for the people. I mean, one was a friendly, so I'm pretty sure that wasn't a sin binning. But look at the implication of those actions, and if we need to make sure that at the start of this season that is not going to be acceptable. And there is a distinction between careless and reckless and deliberate and all that kind of thing, then, let's just put up with it. I think, I don't know if it's been confirmed or not. I've just been trying to look while I was speaking. I think Luke Gale might have got 5 games.
So people will be upset about that as well, because he's appealed and got less than it's not frivolous, but I don't know.
But,
it is what it is.
I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. I think in hindsight, what Luke will regret more than anything is not necessarily leading with his foot, which may have been partly instinctive. I think he'll realise that clearly if you do make contact, that's why you're up before the beak. But that he'll know in his heart of hearts that he should not have put his hands on another player who was seeking treatment. And if that ends up with 5 matches in total, if that's what it is, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but that's the rumour. So be it. The next player won't do it.
It's I wonder if players do that because they want to convince the referee that the player who they fouled is not as injured as they think, so they don't get as harsh a punishment, which is a daft thing to do.
And I also, again, I'm not going to speak for Luke. I'm not going to look into his mind, but I suspect he knew when it had happened that there was a danger of him getting sent off. And that one of the ways, again, he tried to assume before that decision was made that it wasn't that serious, was to try and make out that the player he'd made contact with wasn't injured. But I think all he's done is he's heaped more upon himself by doing that.
And
he'll regret doing it.
The idea that sending a player off means the referee ruined that game, when you just have to look at the scoreboard, you just have to watch the game itself. And Hull 6, St Helens 38. St Helens, I said to someone, didn't have to get out of neutral, let alone first gear, to win that game. Hull handing them chance after chance after chance. And St Helens, being the champion side, they are won very comfortably. If people turned off because of Luke Gale being sent off, they turned off because the game was a non-contest by half time.
I don't think anybody turned off. I mean, I think there were two things that struck me about the game. One was the absolutely sensational tribute to Johnny Whiteley beforehand, that was not only magnificently put together by the whole club to do him justice, but was reflected in a national sporting channel. Thought that was really important, that, you know, Channel 4 was exactly the right vehicle for people to understand how important Johnny Whiteley was to that city. So with the greatest respect to if that had been on Sky or Premier, those who would have known would have seen it, but nobody who didn't know would have come across it. But the fact that it was so poignantly and beautifully done and reflected on a national channel in front of over 500,000 viewers was fantastic. And I think if nothing else comes out of that afternoon, then it's worth everybody watching that back, because it was magnificent. The other thing is, in those conditions, if you are down to 12 men, there is a way where the conditions can help you. That yes, you do have to go a little bit conservative, and yes, perhaps you play to your strength, which is keeping the ball very tight for 5 drives, and with a kicker like Josh Reynolds, booing it as far down as you can and putting in a decent chase. I'm not sure Hull did that enough. I don't think they played the game as well as they could have done when they were down to 12 men, and they must have looked up and thought, well, what might help us is it's going to be difficult to handle a ball in this weather. If we can keep Saints where we need to keep them, it might not end up being 38 points to 6. Hull weren't good enough to do that. No. By the same token, Saints kept playing. They did keep offloading the ball. A number of times it stuck. There were a couple of tries that I think Brett Hodgson would be extremely annoyed about, that they were far enough out when they were constructed that at least somebody should have. I mean, the Matautia one springs to mind. I thought he was actually man of the match, had a wonderful game. But, you know, there were 3 or 4 occasions where he could have been stopped, but wasn't. So I think Hull will look at that and go that, you know, the disparity between the teams, even in those conditions and even in a man down, was exemplified by the scoreline. Saints were that good, Hull weren't. And I think no doubt we'll talk about where everybody sits at the moment and all the results and who's in crisis after 2 weeks and who isn't. And all I would say is those teams that have suffered either suspensions and or injuries are not as high up the league as to those that are naming unchanged 21s every week. And as Saints are one of those teams, they're by far the best team, the benchmark team. But at the moment, they're not having to make too many changes to what is already a winning lineup. So Josh Sim comes in, and is on the end of some really good work that is just the way St Helens play. But apart from that, nothing's really changed from week 1 to week 2. Huddersfield have had a really settled team. Wigan again have named an unchanged team for their game against Huddersfield this week. Salford seem to be picking the same players in the key positions. Warrington haven't had everybody on board that they would have want. Clearly, they've had a couple of very important players affected by the disciplinary, but more often than not, they're picking from strength. You then start getting to the likes of Catalan, who have got 5 props out at the moment. Again, some of it self-inflicted because it's for disciplinary reasons, but you know, when your team is a forward-dominated team to get control and 5 of your pack are missing, it's going to affect your consistency. Hull clearly have got more injury, I think, coming out of pre-season than anybody else. Leeds, again, a lot of injuries. Hull KR not been wanted to pick the team that they'd planned to. Castleford without Danny Richardson, and they built a lot of pre-season around their halfback pairings. And Toulouse can barely get 17 men on a park at the moment. So The only team I haven't mentioned is Wakefield, because I thought they were brilliant on Saturday in defeat in Catalan without 6 players.
Yeah, we've got 2 points on the moral league table, so that's good news for us. Luke Gale, 5 games, it's confirmed by the club, so there you go. People can moan about that now because it's not 8 or not 4 or whatever. So, but that's a big chunk of Hull's. Well, I'm going to say salary cap. I don't know if he is or not, but a big chunk of Hull's pre-season plans will have been built around their captain, and there he is. He's missing for the next 5 games, and whether the length of the season compared to the ban is irrelevant. He gets banned for what he gets banned for. There was a tweet this morning from James Gordon of Love Rugby League, and he mentioned in ice hockey they very explicitly explain why players have been banned. Now, I know the RFL do on the website, but you have to go searching through a bloody PDF file or doc or something to find it. If they did some nice fancy graphics, I'm sure there's someone at the wherever Red Hole lives these days who could knock some up. I'm sure, just something they could do.
Information and more of it never does any harm, but you're not going to change prejudice.
No.
It doesn't matter if it was all singing and dancing and flashing lights. Those that don't want to believe will never believe. We're further down the line than we were in that decisions are now published on the website. They're not that hard to find if you want to find them. It's disciplinary section on the RFL website. I still think there is a case perhaps for opening up the disciplinary hearings in this day and age to have them even live streamed, put them on our league. I think there is probably an audience for that. I'm not sure I'd want to sit through a tribunal, but and then if you had a complaint about something, you could see it in front of your eyes. And all of these stories, again, without wishing to contest anybody writing anything, because they should. It's, if it's a newsworthy piece, it's a newsworthy piece. Everybody's looking for an audience these days. But I just think the important thing, it cannot be about anything other than the health and safety of the players, and anything that jeopardizes that, I'm not sure you're on safe ground. Either the assumption that every referee has an ulterior motive. I mean, if you genuinely are into conspiracy theory in that way, then I'm not sure that's the essence of any sport. Be a passionate fan, absolutely, but if you honestly are looking at the refereeing appointments and deciding not to go to a game, I'm really not sure sport is for you. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is if you think that the disciplinary process, which is made up of independent people, be they ex-players, judges, whoever, if you don't think they're independent, then again, I suspect you're the tree that you are barking up is perhaps the wrong one.
And you also can't compare a late hit, a head-high tackle, picking someone up off the floor, foul and abusive language to a match official, and racism and or homophobia and or whatever, because they're completely different crimes. Yes, they have similar punishments because this is the sphere we're in. You can't take someone's car away from them or something, or force them to drink the Hull FC stadium soup. There are only so many punishments you can have. But I don't know, everything's a conspiracy and everything's against something. I mean, Wakefield got fined 10 grand today by the RFL. So, I'm marching on down to Red Hall and then getting kicked out because I don't live there anymore with me banners.
Well, you can have your teeth whitened while you're there.
I mean, as Bullock Shed said on Twitter, we're just going to, so we should have said to the RFL, Wakefield should have said to the RFL, we'll have a COVID awareness day and, do some marketing or something. When are the Bulls doing that, by the way? Outside of Hull and St Helens, Salford, who are the best team in the country at the minute because they beat Toulouse 38-12. Oh, no, they're third in the table, I beg your pardon. 38-12, third in the table. Ken's here with 4 tries. Obviously, it's nothing's changed from Toulouse than in week one. They've still got the same problem of not enough bodies. As you mentioned last week, it's the same as Toronto had at the start of the ill-fated 2020 season. They haven't got enough bodies, and not necessarily of their own making on this case, but they've still got to find some from somewhere.
I think there's a real concern that they've now admitted that they're an impasse with Mark Carella and he's not going to play for them again. I would have liked to have seen him in Super League, and it's possible that another Super League club may well decide to take a punt on him. But that is a shame. He been such an asset in the years moving up the leagues. It's almost like, he got to touch the golden chalice, or he was Icarus, wasn't he? He touched the sun and then it melted him. For whatever reason, he isn't going to play for them, and that is a shame. I think the main thing about Salford's start to the season, and Paul Rowell has been absolutely honest and saying, there's no way we're getting carried away. They scored the same number of tries at Castleford. They had an excellent goal kicker in Mark Sneed to get them over the line there. They played a Toulouse team that have their first trip over here in Super League with missing some players who they'd expected to have in monsoon conditions, and Salford played in a very attractive brand of rugby to win that game, which on paper you would have said they would have been favourites to win anyway. So they won't get carried away. But I think what was encouraging more than anything for Salford is a crowd of 4,000 for the first home game in an afternoon where you could have swum to the AJ Bell Stadium. Our good friends, the Carters, were posting monsoon-like pictures of the rain as it teemed down, and in those conditions, no matter who you're playing, is a fine reward. 4 tries is great. It's a confidence thing. The longer you go not being beaten, they'll go to Hull this week, who have got all the issues of appealing and Luke Gale's sentence and players queuing up to get into the treatment room, and they'll genuinely feel that Salford, they'll feel they can win that game, and there's no reason to think they wouldn't. And if they've got 3 out of 3, then suddenly they're motoring, aren't they? They're at the end of the table where they've got a bit of leeway, and they can plan looking upwards rather than down.
The other non-televised game was on Saturday afternoon. Huddersfield beating Hull KR 26-12. I've not seen any of the highlights from that one, but obviously Huddersfield's good start to the season continues because they're second in the table, so they're the second best team in the country. So the Hull KR will be slightly concerned again with their start, but again, the credit's got to go with the Giants and Ian Watson's men.
I think Huddersfield just seem a bit more comfortable in their skin this year, that they all know what is trying to be achieved. They know the Ian Watson way. He's recruited in the style of the way he wants to play. He's made some selection decisions already that show that, bringing in Theo Farge and Tui Lolohea, that he wants to control games. It possibly won't be expansive first. It'll be a bit of percentages, a bit of territory, a bit of doing the 1%ers. Chris Hill gives them all of that. That's what he was renowned for at Warrington, and it's working in these initial stages. It's full credit to them, and if they do get, I think they had 5,500 people, sold out all their corporate, which is not something that they've done that often before on a Saturday afternoon, which again is not often an ideal time for rugby league with the weight of other sport that's around. No, they've got off to a good start. There's a positivity about them, and their game at Wigan on Thursday, which is another one that isn't going to be televised, the two unbeaten teams. I think that's fascinating the way things are shaping up.
I would ask why they're playing on the Thursday, but I'm not that interested.
Because Wigan Athletic are playing on Saturday.
Wigan pathetic, right?
And there has to be 48 hours, I think, if they can be.
Catalans beat Wakefield on the telly. If I were, I tweeted that I thought it was a strong coaching decision from Willie Purchin to drop Kelepi Tanganaro, who's been undoubtedly Wakefield's best player for the last 3 years since he arrived at the club in 2019. So to be dropped after one game was an interesting decision. Lots of conjecture about who was and wasn't there for whatever reason. The club says they're injured. I wouldn't play them this week against St Helens. Give them, if they're injured, give them more time to rest, because I don't think any of the players who went out there on Saturday did anything wrong. I thought they all tried their best, nearly got a win. Some great play from Tom Johnston for his tries. As I've said a million times before, I wonder how good Max Jowett would have been had his progress not been stunted by bringing in the likes of Scott Griggs, which I never understood at the time, because Jowett appeared to be ready, but I'm not a Super League coach, so what do I know? But he's the real deal. I mean, it's the advantage a Saints have, isn't it? Is they can bring young players into a winning side. You don't have that same... It's a different kind of pressure than if you're a team at the bottom end of the table. I understand that, but... C'est la vie. Max Jowett was a superstar again for Wakefield, and the Catalans got the win. And they'll be pleased with the result, not necessarily the performance, perhaps. But as you say, they with the number of players missing through suspensions, and they've got that of course to continue, getting points on the board is the most important thing for them.
I think going 10 points behind early on, you'd fear for Wakefield in that game. So it says a lot about what Willie Poaching has brought already to that side in terms of togetherness, that not only did they not capitulate, but had the game gone another 10 minutes, there's a chance they could have actually won it. And I think he glossed over deliberately the fact that there was about 6 players missing who had played the week before. And I think we all know that the issue behind that was, were they or were they not vaccinated? And the club may not want to say, and that's entirely their right. But clearly, the laws as they currently stand in France are different to the laws here, and you cannot be let in the country if you can't prove that you've been fully vaccinated. And I suspect that some absences were for that reason. But the players who stepped in were fantastic. James Batchelor in the centre, out of position, it was incredibly good. Once he got attuned to the positional side of his game, I think the desire that the Wakefield team showed was perhaps something we haven't seen over the last 2 or 3 years, which is no disrespect at all to Chris Chester, but it looked like a team that wanted to be out there and fighting for each other. I think you're right about Max Jowett. I think he's been invested with confidence. I suspect that with having Franny Cummins on the coaching team, who's obviously played a lot of his career in fullback or switching between fullback and wing, he can help Max Jowett. But clearly the talent is there. But I just thought the forwards, they just look like they like each other. They've got, there are some teams where you can tell that the guy next to you you have to invest total and utter trust that he is going to do his job. And sometimes you can look at defensive lines and go, he may have left that for somebody else. I got the impression that Wakefield were in it together and made all the right noises, showed a degree of disappointment to not come away with a win, which I think when we predicted any of the results the week before, as we were strong-armed into doing.
Yeah, no predictions today.
None at all. By that Schofield chap. I think we all went Catalan, didn't we? Or did you go Wakefield?
No, I went Wakefield. Yeah.
I don't think that was on form, was it?
No.
That was blind loyalty. Great performance in defeat. I know you get nothing for it, but what Wakefield seem to be doing at the moment, I'd be heartened by.
Leeds are in crisis apparently because they've lost 2 in a row now. That's what and Castleford. So Leeds lost to Wigan. I didn't see this because I was out on Friday. 34-12. But it's not as if Wigan are a rubbish team, is it? And obviously they were impressive enough in week 1. Jay Field with the hat trick of tries, the star performer. Are you concerned, Phil? Have the wheels fallen off at Leeds already 2 games into the season? I mean, I know the answer, but
Yeah, of course they have. No. I do think that the way Wigan performed 5 minutes before and 10 minutes after half-time completely turned the game. And they've got now in their armoury pace. And they've got a coaching system that wants to utilise that pace, which is fantastic. Who knows what difference it would have made last year if Field had been fit. But clearly, He is an absolute out-and-out danger anywhere on the field if you give him an inch. And Leeds won't be the only defence that find that this year. When you add Bevan French into that mix, who is back, they'll have to assess his fitness levels, because clearly, he's been back in Australia, looking after his mum for a while, and quite rightly, the last thing on his mind should have been being Super League fitness ready. But you stick him maybe in the centres and leave Field at fullback, and there's threat. And they are now learning how best to use it. John Bateman is back to something like we would recognise as his best. I think Tommy Luluai was sensational on Friday night. His conditions suited him. But again, it's no coincidence that Harry Smith isn't featuring at the moment. They're playing a slightly different way, and it's working for them. They'll be really pleased with the start they've had. I've been immensely impressed with Matty Pete and everything that he's said, and re-engaging with the crowd and the community. Leeds again have just got too many players out at the moment who are very important to them, and some of that is of their own making because they're suspended. Some of that is injury. Obviously, Richie Agar now is, I think, gone for 3 months.
Richie Myler, not Richie Agar.
Richie Myler.
Richard Agar's okay as far as we know.
Yeah, he's fine. He hasn't gone on holiday. No, he's fine. Richie Myler out for 3 months, which is a blow. Fussy Tour and Newman aren't back this week, so yeah, they're doing it a bit tough. But Reece Martin on compassionate leave. There's all manner of reasons why. Even they wouldn't admit it, but the week before against Warrington, on a short turnaround, Leeds had played the majority of the game with less men in sapping conditions. Not a huge surprise that at points in the Wigan game they ran out of some energy. But no, I wouldn't be concerned. I think you can't laud the fact that there are kids coming through and then occasionally misfire because you got kids in the team. I saw some people criticising Liam Tyndall because he got caught by Jai Field when Leeds were 6-0 up, and that could have changed the complexion of the game. I'd love a young winger that is prepared to go on the outside and see how far he can get. It just so happened that Field was quicker and read the situation well. But no, I'm not overly concerned.
If Richie Myler ends up on Channel 4 for the next game, we're calling nepotism. We're calling nepotism on that one. But just on that whole Saints, I'm sure that Leon Price didn't pick Jack Welsby as man of the match. I thought he picked somebody else, but maybe I wasn't listening close enough. I don't know. You got to listen to the commentary. It's all much of a muchness.
Commentators needs to be good. He's all right.
In the Dowell Powell derby, and there's an offshoot to this which comes up later, which is quite an amusing aside. Warrington beat Castleford. And now they are in crisis. Castleford fans have already turned on some have already turned on Lee Radford, which again is ridiculous. You made the point earlier about Ian Watson at Huddersfield, and it took them a year perhaps to get used to his processes, trust the process. It doesn't take overnight for you to go from Darryl Powell's style of football to Lee Radford's style of football. And as you mentioned, much like they have for the last couple of years, unsettled in the halves again. All plans around Danny Richardson, and then he gets injured in the first week. So I'm not saying that Warrington didn't deserve their win, but there are mitigating circumstances for Castleford already. And but it was a good win for the Warrington Wolves. And who knows? Perhaps so on and so forth.
Wizzy Rascal.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Well, I mean, what was everybody talking about after that game? They were, Castleford fans clearly were talking about casting crisis. Warrington fans were clearly claiming that they were going to win the. No, nobody was reading too much into it. But what we were all talking about was the fact that a young lady in a Formula One simulated car had got over 2 million views.
Do you know what's brilliant? And this is the offshoot I was getting into. So you've opened the door now. When we were at Hunslet on Tuesday, the story broke about Ollie Wilkes and Jamie Apton saying they took performance-enhancing drugs in their career. I don't know why the story was timed at that point, why ITV picked up on it when they showed no interest in rugby league whatsoever.
Is it because they've got the Six Nations? Oh, that was a conspiracy theory.
You'd have to be extremely naive to think that no one involved in professional sport, not just rugby league, takes performance enhancing drugs, because of course they do. It's, we talk about players getting an advantage in sport from day one. This is another advantage. One of the things I remember from my childhood is Ben Johnson winning the Olympics with his arm up in the air about 5 miles ahead of everyone else. As it turns out, just about everyone in that race was on something, and he was only got pinged for it, and some of them didn't get criticised. So hilariously, this story comes out. And I assume that the assumption was, everyone's going to talk about everyone in rugby leagues on drugs after this. As it turns out, we're talking about a kid in a car at Warrington, which has completely blown it away. That's not to say that there isn't an issue with drugs. Of course there is. There is in every sport, but no more so in rugby league, I believe, with no numbers to back it up than any other sport. Why those two players chose to speak, I don't know. What I do find massively hypocritical as a sport is we can't say, Oliver Wilson, Jamie Acton are evil, but here's Tyson Fury saying rugby league's great when he has been banned in his sport for taking performance-enhancing drugs before we get into anything else. So we can't have it both ways, but I just thought it was very amusing that all the publicity you thought would have been negative out of that story on Wednesday was completely blown away by a kid in a car. And I don't care whether it was set up or not that she drove past or not. I don't care, because it's funny. It was on the BBC News pages of their website, not the sport bit, the news, because they have silly stories like that. And the cut through of the drug story has not worked because everyone's talking about a daft thing that happened before a match. And that's brilliant. I love it.
And it is also the state of the world that we live in at the moment, that people are looking for, what is it, that 1.5 minutes of instantaneous social media type entertainment. None of us expected it. If it was staged, again, my hat is raised to the people at Warrington, and like it was to those at Hull for the dignified manner in which they sent off one of their greatest ever players. This was the opposite end of that scale, if you like. That, if you want to get the message across that Warrington are a fun-loving, progressive sort of place where if you're anywhere near, you might want to pop in because you're going to enjoy yourself, whatever the 80 minutes of the rugby is going to be. Great. If they told her to drive past, apparently they've got other things planned, which is, fantastic, because as soon as they're going to roll her out, then, maybe the Stig's going to be there. I don't know. Whatever it might be. Maybe Top Gear's going to come from a Warrington home game because a lot of the presenters are from that part of the world. Fantastic. Whatever it might be. But I don't see... I see a lot of clubs doing a lot of innovative things. We saw Dewsbury do it on their social media this week with... getting the name of a Winter Olympian that was very, very close to their team name. Fantastic. The guy who goes around rating food, who apparently is
massively popular,
massive social media presence. He was at Hull giving their street food 10 out of 10, which again, all of that adds into the fact that we are now on Channel 4 and we are on Premiere, and the viewing figures are up. It's the curious as much as the committed, and what Wizzy Rascal did was gave everybody a laugh, gave Sky the opportunity to spread beyond a paywall, gave lots and lots of people the chance to comment on something that's rugby league related they wouldn't otherwise, and have heightened the anticipation for the next time it happens. So fantastic. Yeah, we can talk about the fact that Warrington were too good for Castleford. Cass clearly haven't yet settled into the way Lee Radford wants them to play. I'm not sure Warrington have hit their straps yet under Darrell either. I think it's relief that he's got that first win on the board, particularly as the fixture planners gave him his 2 old clubs for his first 2 games. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a young girl in a car.
Smiles on faces. That's what it's all about.
And also the fact the fact that clearly James Child wasn't in on it if it was planned, and his reaction was priceless as well. Just looking at his face as the car not only went past once, but went past twice. Stefan Ratchford, if he knew, was brilliant, because he obviously played to the putting his hands out to get a ball that wasn't there. And the fact is, he's just about to kick off in a really big game. So if that was all stage managed, even better.
Yeah, wonderful. It's just great. What a week it was for Lee. They won twice. They beat Bradford on the telly, which we knew about because we were on the show last Tuesday. And then they hammered York in apparently terrible conditions on Sunday afternoon, 40 points to 4. Big win for the Centurions. Obviously, they lost to Fev in week 2, but great start to the season for them. Newcastle, they picked up their second win, coming from behind to beat Whitehaven, 24-16 down at half-time. So that's some second half from the Thunder. Fev beat London, 30 points to 12. Concerned about London blocking lots of long-term fans on Twitter, apparently, which seems an odd thing to do. But another win for Featherstone. Professional win, I think you'd say, again, in the conditions. And obviously last night, Widnes winning at Dewsbury. Dewsbury getting 2,500 or something. Cheap tickets, get a crowd in for the telly, loads of kids around, brilliant. And Widnes 4 wins from 4. What a start to the season for them. Obviously not having the best of times in recent years, but you can't get better than 4 wins from 4. And there they are, top of the championship with Fev.
Well, they finished last season really strongly, and I think they've carried that into this year. A couple of really important signings as well, but an experienced squad. You look at the names going down the team sheet. You go, yeah, I didn't realise they were that necessarily there, or he's still there. And Matty Smith in the championship is still a threat. He can control the game. I think we'll see the disparity between those who are full time and those who are part time over the next couple of weeks. It's becoming a little bit evident. Lee celebrated 2 40-point wins by going out and buying Kristen Inu, which again is not going to make them any weaker. So yeah, I think the weather did play a part this weekend. Clearly, Workington are struggling a little bit playing at this level. London are as well. Bradford will be an interesting case in point because their game was off. I think they would have relished that. I suspect they were as a potential banana skin if they'd have played Barrow this week, who were unbeaten, and restless natives if the Bulls had gone down at home again. They get the chance. I think they'll win at London in the Cup this week to rebuild again. But yeah, you don't want to let Featherstone and Lee, possibly Widnes, get away from the rest of the pack if the rest of the pack amongst them have got ambitions to perhaps hunt for a promotion place. But it is looking that those who have recruited the best are, not surprisingly, at the top.
4th round of the Challenge Cup this weekend. The TV games: Batley versus the Navy on the BBC, York versus Newcastle on the Sportsman, so they'll be good, hopefully. Saturday, North Wales versus Hunslet at Caldy Rebunion. I don't know where, apparently somewhere on the Wirral. I don't know where that is, but
near Liverpool.
Liverpool, where maybe Dr. Kukash can pop in. Doncaster, Whitehaven. He's back. I saw him on told Derek's Twitter the other day out in Dubai. Doncaster, Whitehaven, Halifax, Fev. That's always tasty. Hunslet, Parkside versus Sheffield Eagles. London, Bradford, Rochdale, Barrow, and Workington versus Dewsbury, the other cup games, along with Lee versus Widnes, which is the Premier game on Monday. And hopefully all these storms stop storming and we get a full card of fixtures.
I think it's gonna get cold, but I think we've lost the worst of the storms. Lee Widnes will be a fantastic game, because not only would that be a great game if it was in the Championship at the moment, but the fact that is winner take all cup tie, that will be worth watching.
Super League this week, it is Leeds versus Catalans. That's a TV game on Thursday. Wigan versus Huddersfield on Friday night. Hull KR versus Castle on the telly.
Good luck to Catalan flying into Leeds Bradford Airport if it's windy.
Is that might get more viewers as well than the game, because people love watching that now.
What's that website that everybody's watching at the moment?
Big Jet TV or something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'll take my phone down to Leeds Bradford and filming and live stream. We'll get more views than we do for talking about rugby. Hull versus Cass on the telly. That'll be a big game on Friday. Obviously,
that is a big game, because actually neither can really afford to lose that.
Well, if you surprisingly have a better record at St Helens than you'd think. We won there a few years ago, but James Child penalty try. It was it's great. That was a great one. I think I did commentary on that on my own because I couldn't get a summariser. Hull versus Salford on Saturday. Toulouse versus Warrington. Is it on TV or not? It doesn't look like it is.
No, I don't think so. I don't think any of Toulouse's games are on.
Right. So that's the matches coming up this week. Is there any news that we haven't? So people will say, "Where's Scully?" He'll be back not next week, but the week after.
He's got, I think, Des Drummond's funeral next week,
and he was at Dewsbury enjoying the hospitality, wasn't he? So
he was. Yes, he was looking forward to the. What did they serve at Dewsbury? I didn't see Premier doing their food review.
He was at York as well, apparently, on the Sunday. So he's getting around.
Oh, he's everywhere. He's rugbyed out.
No doubt he'll probably be at Lee after the funeral on Monday. I'd have thought, with the game being on there.
He is. He is. He's staying over for that very reason.
The wheelchair Super League's been launched, which is exciting.
That is great news. And again, we look at other areas of the game as potential templates for the sport. I think when we said the Women's Super League was going to have a southern section grafted onto it, that was actually quite exciting for what a Super League might look like in the future. Well, the same has happened now with the wheelchair. They've gone to 7 teams, but the most exciting team in there, I think, is the London Roosters.
The Roosters.
Because they've looked at the talent that's coming through at Medway, the talent that was coming through at the Argonauts, and they've decided to make a super club that will be able to compete in the Super League. And you suddenly think, are wheelchair and potentially women doing what the men dare not do? But that's quite exciting, and that is part of a wider blueprint of how they see the sport spreading into 4 countries with divisions of 10. And they've started that process, and I haven't heard any dissent. I haven't heard an Argonaut come out and go, I don't want to be a Rooster. I think they can see that by pooling their resources, they've got more chance of reeling in the Wigans and the Hulls and the Leeds and the Warringtons. North Wales are there as well, so which is great. I'm really excited about this wheelchair Super League because it leads into the World Cup, and I think the profile that wheelchair has already got is going to be enhanced with a team called London in their Super League, and that is a lesson for the men's running game to learn.
Fingers crossed we'll have some guests in the next few weeks ahead of the season. And Leeds are playing their games at the university in the city centre, aren't they, rather than out at Morley? So as if Morley's like millions of miles away. So, but that's good. That's good.
They're training at Leeds Beckett as part of a deal that will see them get the access to the very best facilities. Clearly the same as the national team are getting, and there will be the team to beat. But there's a big link with Leeds Beckett University and that School of Science there, and it having been up there, it is an absolutely incredible facility for all sports.
I'll try to get down there at some point with my camera. We're not too far away from the Women's Challenge Cup getting underway. I think it's a couple of weeks' time now. So, again, hopefully speaking to some people ahead of that, because that'd be nice. But I don't know what's happening. So we'll see.
That's taken as a given on all fronts.
I'm going to go to Cass versus Wakefield anyway, because we've got a chance of winning a game for the first time this decade. So that'll be quite exciting. So. Your
team are worth watching.
Yeah, but it's exciting. It is exciting. Positivity, you see. Even the negative story we've turned into a positive because it got completely blown out of the water by a kid in a car. They can't destroy us. But I think
Danny Levy's been unsuccessful in overturning the challenge to his grade C rating, so he will have a 2-match ban for touching an opponent who was injured.
Paulie's got 3 games over 2 bans. That's not good for York, is it? Good old Paulie. apart from that, I don't think there's any other news. The magazine is
No,
out though.
it is. It is. I know it'll be on the screen. So if anybody wishes to send us some constructive suggestions as to how it can be better, we will be always open to them. Contributors, look forward to seeing and hearing from you. But yes, an episode that is almost every page mentions Channel 4.
Channel 4. They did all right again, didn't they, this week? I'm sure someone will find fault somewhere in there, but
I'm sure they're looking forward to standing on a touchline and it not raining.
I think what people need to realise is live TV is a lot more complicated than just sticking a camera somewhere, and things don't always go to plan. But
the interesting thing now is that they've got a month until their next game, and they're going to need to keep Rugby League or Super League in the consciousness of the Channel 4 audience that's been attracted, that isn't necessarily a Rugby League one. And you're going to need more than Adam Hill's mentioned it on the last leg every week. You are going to need to see it on Gogglebox or whatever cross pollination they can do. That, you know, we need people on Steph's packed lunch just to keep Rugby League going until the next game is on. So it'd be interesting to see how they do that. I think they've got plans to do that.
They've got that audience thing where they ask them questions. Get a player in there. I don't know who. Get someone on. I would say get someone on location, but we don't want anything to do with them.
Just don't mention anyone on Naked Attraction.
Not again. Phil, pleasure as always. We'll be back on. Hopefully on Monday there's no storms and we can be back in the studio and talk live about things. But other than that, it's what a positive thing. We started off with the negativity of idiots trying to defend the indefensible, and we start excited about a kid in the car.
This is the changing face of Rugby League.
Thank you very much for listening. Thanks to the person who left a review last week. I put on Twitter, please review us, and someone reviewed it.
Was it a good one?
It was better when Mark Wilson was on, it said, but they still gave us 5 stars.
Oh well, fair enough.
So I'll take that. And they're probably right. So I'm going back to eating dolly mixtures. Take the 5 stars. Leave us a review. And buy the magazine. It's an actual fungible thing, as opposed to a non-fungible thing. So I still don't know what that means. But enjoy your Rugby League, fungible or not, and we'll be back with you next week to talk some more.
And dress up warm.
And eat dolly mixtures.